Hello, my name is Emma, and welcome to my favorite books of 2016 list. Yeah, man. I read a lot of really great books this year, and I feel very fortunate to have read so many great books. But I do attribute the fact that I read so many great books this year for just being a little choosier. I was a lot choosier this year with what I read. I remember when I first started on BookTube, I just sort of would buy books and not really think about like what the books were or who wrote them or if I was going to like the book, which is kind of interesting because you don't really think about that. You think that by being on BookTube you would always be choosier, but I just wasn't. So the last couple of years I've been a little choosier, and this year was like a culmination of being the choosiest, and I read a lot of really great stuff, and I have a lot to get through. So let's get started. The first book I want to talk about is a book I don't actually own. I rented it at my school library, but I really want to own my own copy. And that is Bound Feet in Western Dress by Peng Mei Natasha Chang. This is a really amazing memoir. It's about Peng Mei Natasha Chang's great aunt who lived in the early days of the Communist Revolution in China. It's a really powerful portrait of a woman who's just trying to get through life and get through this huge change and these huge changes in her life and this huge changes happening in her country. It's powerful and simple and really great. If you like memoirs, like, you will not be disappointed. I was thoroughly impressed and thoroughly moved by this story. So yeah, give that a read. Next I have Modern Lovers by Emma Straub. I read this during Booktubeathon. I was very lucky to read a lot of great books during Booktubeathon. Three of them made them onto this list. But Emma Straub wrote The Vacationers, which I liked but didn't love, but I really loved Modern Lovers. This is about four people, two couples, and their children. It's about marriage. It's about sort of a midlife crisis. The two couples were in a band when they were in college, and it's just, well, not all of them, three of them were. It's getting complicated. Let's move on. Anyway. But this book is just really funny and sharp, but also felt very realistic. I'm not from Brooklyn. I've never been to Brooklyn, and I don't know these people, obviously, but I felt like they were real people. Emma Straub writes beautifully and writes very simply, and I just was really charmed by this book. I found it charming, and I really liked it, and it made me really happy. And these characters are both like totally, you hate them, but you also know them and relate to them and love them. It was great. Next we have Lumberjanes by a whole lot of cool people. I read chapters 2 and 1 and 3 this year. I read, all three of these volumes. Lumberjanes is a really cool sort of intersectional feminist graphic novel series. It's so great. It's about young women who are part of this sort of Girl Scout-like troop, and they get involved in magic, and they fall in love, and it's really great. It has a lot of great queer representation of queer women. It's just so much fun and so lovely and charming, and I was just thoroughly amused and delighted by this series this year. Sorry if I'm a little less bubbly than normal. I'm a bit tired, but I want to film this video, so I'm filming it. Okay, next we have a really cute book that I read this year, and that is The Unexpected Everything by Morgan Matson. I really like Morgan Matson quite a lot. I've read Amy Rogers' Epic Detour, and I read this book, and I read the other one that was before this, and I can't remember what it's called. Oh, Since You've Been Gone, which was on my list last year. But I really love this book because of its portrayal of female friendship. Female friendship really isn't talked about or written about in YA fiction, which I think is a real shame, because female friendship is really important to young women, at least in my experience, and this has a really wonderful portrayal of a friendship or these group of girls who are friends. I loved that the end of the book, it's sort of, you're unsure what's going to happen with this group of friends, but I loved that. I loved how real it was. I loved how these girls fought, but also deeply loved each other, and I think it's really great. A lot of the time, female friendship, especially in YA, is sort of painted as perfect, or it's painted as really catty. and you don't get a really great, wonderful depiction of female friendship that is nuanced and complicated. And that's what this book does. The only other example that I can think of that I've read recently was I reread The Princess Diaries, and Mia's friendship with Lily is a really great, I think, example of a female friendship. Anyway, I loved this book. I was very charmed. Next we have How to Be Good by Nick Hornby. I'm a big fan of Nick Hornby, and this is one of his books that I had never heard of. It was written in 2000. This book is about a woman who is married to the self-proclaimed angriest man in Holloway, which is the town that she lives in, and he's just an angry, kind of awful guy. He's just terrible, and it's through her perspective, the wife's perspective. And one day, the husband comes home, and he has completely changed. He's become so good with a capital G, like takes in homeless people and sells all their kids' toys or gives all their kids' toys away. He's become so good with a capital G that it's driving his wife crazy, and it's making her feel like she, there's something wrong with her and she's not being good enough because her husband's become like so ultra good. It's a really interesting book about this idea of good and bad in humans, and she talks a lot about it. I'm a good person. I'm a doctor. I'm a good person. But then, isn't really sure that she's a good person. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. It's really funny and bleak and charming. It's probably the bleakest Nick Hornby book I've ever read, but I really loved it. It just struck a chord with me and made me laugh so hard, but it also just was real and smart and interesting, and I loved it. Next we have another very charming small book, and that is Our Spoons Came from Woolworths by Barbara Commons. This book is set in 1950s England. It was written in 1950s England, and it's about a girl called Sophia. Sophia's 21 when she gets married to this sort of just doesn't do anything sort of guy who just doesn't really care about her and just cares about being an artist. And it's about her life and her struggles in the world of being a domestic person and taking care of her kids and taking care of herself and taking care of the things that need to be taken care of. And it's really charming. And if you like domestic stories, I would give this a read. I really want to read more Barbara Commons because I just loved it. I really love this book. There's a very scary depiction of birth or labor in this book that I wasn't expecting, but I enjoyed it. I don't know what to say for these. I loved them all, obviously. Move my copy of Singing in the Rain out of the way from my shelf. Next we have I Am Malala. I read this for a class, and I loved it. Again, I'm saying all the same things. This is obviously her memoir. I think a lot of people have read this, but I really love memoirs, especially by women who have very diverse experiences than mine. I think it's a really great way to sort of better understand or better get a look of what they're going through in their lives and broadening your perspective, which is why reading diversely is so important. One of the many reasons why it's so important, but which is something I want to do more of in 2017. Hopefully that's a goal for everyone. I just really love this book, and I think I loved it most because Malala is such a teenager. She in this book is doing all these great things, but at her core she's just a young person, and I think that's a really powerful message, that even a young person who has the same likes and maybe dislikes as you and cares about the things that you care about can also care about something as important as girls' education and fighting the Taliban and being brave as Malala has in her life. And I think that's so powerful, and that's such a great message to be sending out to young people. Okay, next we have The Magician's Land by Lev Grossman. I finally finished this series this year. I also read The Magician's King. I started reading The Magicians in 2009 maybe, and I just love this series. I've talked about it a lot. It means a lot to me. It made me read, and I love it so much, and this was such a great culmination of the story. What I love about The Magicians series most of all is, while a lot of people don't like Quentin, I love the fact that you see Quentin grow as a person, and you see him from like a whiny, privileged, obnoxious young man, into, still very privileged, but incredibly kind and sort of self-actualizing adult man, and I think that's a really interesting and powerful growth to see. There's also just a great cast of characters and a great world that Lev Grossman built. It's a world with real consequences to things, which doesn't, I think, always happen. I think it normally happens in stories with magic, but I just really love it so much, and it just strikes a chord with me to my deepest bones. Next we have 4 Seasons in Rome, another book I read during Booktubeathon. This is a memoir, sort of travelogue, written by Anthony Doerr, who wrote All the Light We Cannot See, which I have not read. We'll read in 2017, hopefully. This is just a beautiful book about living in Rome for a year, and it's musing, and he muses about, you know, marriage and family and kids and life and death and religion and architecture and art. And you have to sort of like books that are sort of meandering, but I like books that are very meandering, so this was perfect for me, and I just loved it. It was charming and beautiful, and just, ugh, it made me feel the things, Next we have Gaudy Night by Dorothy L. Sayers. I've talked a lot about Dorothy L. Sayers. As you can see, this is the copy that I used to write my research grant on. Yeah, Dorothy L. Sayers is a great mystery writer because she knows how to write character, and she knows how to write great characters. And Harriet Vane, who's sort of the main character in this book, is a great character. She's complex and interesting, and her relationship with Lord Peter Wimsey, sort of main character throughout the entire series, is really complex and interesting. I could talk a lot about this, and I do want to make a video about this at some point for my own sort of personal, just want to talk about it. But I love this book mainly because of Harriet Vane, but I also love it because it's set in a women's college, and I go to a women's college, and I think that's really cool to sort of have that in fiction. I related a lot to this book and those depictions of a women's college. Okay, so the last book, or I have some honorable mentions. I'll do my honorable mentions. My honorable mentions are The Razor's Edge by Debbie Somerset Maugham, the book I wrote my senior thesis on. A very great book about post-World War I Europe and America. All the Birds in the Sky by Charlie Jane Anders, a really fantastic depiction and sort of cross-section of science and fantasy. And we have Rules of Civility by Amor Towles, a fantastic historical fiction novel set in 1930s New York. I read it. This is the first book I read this year, and I really liked it. Other honorable mentions of books that I do not know where they are living currently. Shades of Grey by Jasper Fforde, which I listened to an audiobook and absolutely loved. I love Jasper Fforde. If you like fantastical, sort of amazing world building, that's your guy. Also read Bitch Planet this year. Loved Bitch Planet. I also read, I read Anne of the Island by Ellen Montgomery, which I loved. I love Anne and Gilbert. I think they're a fantastic couple. I read Funny Girl by Nick Hornby. I really liked Funny Girl. I have so many books that I liked this year. I read Rat Queens Volume 2. Great. I read The Imperfectionist by Tom Robinson. That was a great book. So many books. I read the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants series this summer with my book club, with my girls, and it was just a fantastic experience, and I think that's just, yes, I read 84 Charing Cross Road. I really liked that. I read Jenny Colgan this year. I really enjoy her books. I read The Regional Office is Under Attack by Manuel Gonzalez, and that book was really amazing and interesting, and the concept blew me away. I read The Nest, which I liked. I don't know why I'm using it as an honorable mention. I think I was just on a roll. I read Modern Romance by Aziz Ansari, which I really liked. And I read Radiator Days by Lucy Nicely. I got all of Lucy Nicely's books for Christmas. Radiator Days. This is just a collection of a bunch of comics she did when she was in college. And I love Lucy Nicely, so yes. Okay, so finally, my favorite book I read this year. Oh, I also read Wonder. And Wonder was great. Okay, my favorite book I read this year was Furthermore by Tahara Mafi. I really loved this book. This book made me remember why I love reading. I loved it because I loved the world building. I loved it because the writing was whimsical and beautiful and rich and amazing. I loved it because it had great characters. But I loved it most of all because it celebrates difference. It celebrates this girl, Alice, for being different. It teaches her, through this book, through her story and going through Furthermore and having this adventure, it teaches her that her differences are beautiful and wonderful and amazing, and she is amazing. And I think that is so powerful and important, and I just love this book for that. And I love this book because it reminded me of that and reminded me of how important that is. And yeah, just everyone read this. Read it. I'm telling you right now that you have to read Furthermore. I'm giving you my greatest and highest praise. Read it. Read it. And I don't do that often, although I did it a lot during this video. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Yeah, I'm going to be having sort of a couple videos coming down pretty soon. Hopefully those will be good. I don't know what I'm saying. I'll make some funny stuff too pretty soon. I've been sort of down and out, which happens. But yeah, anyway, I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Bye.